Welcome to Chapter 2 of the Washington State Beekeepers Association Apprentice course. We will be covering the honeybee anatomy. In this chapter, we will look at the exterior of the honeybee, the interior of the honeybee's glands, and their senses. In this section, we will look at the anatomy of the honeybee. I will break down the body parts into three sections: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen, in which I will show you the eyes, antenna, mouth, wings, legs, and stinger. Let's start with the head. In this part, we'll look at the head, where we'll look at the 5 eyes, the antenna, and the mouth. The honeybee has 2 compound eyes with 6,900 facets in each. Like the human eye, their eyes contain 3 types of photoreceptor cones. However, unlike the human eyes that has blue, green, and red cones, the bees have blue, green, and ultraviolet photoreceptors. Yes, this means that the honeybees cannot see red. Since the honeybee sees on the ultraviolet range, they see things in less detail than the human eye. In other words, the human's eye can see 100 times the detail that the honeybee can see. But the honeybee's eye is superior to the human eye in its ability to see movement. The human eye can only see the movement of an image at a rate of 30 times per second, while the honeybee can see the same movement of an image at a rate of 150 times per second or more. This makes the honeybee very sensitive to movement, which allows it to fly at a high rate of speed and see movement at great distances. It also helps them find flowers and return to the right hive. While the honeybee has 2 large eyes to see images, it also has 3 small eyes called ocelli or simple eyes, which is positioned in a triangular formation on the top of the bee's head. And even though these eyes cannot see images, they can detect light. This gives the honeybee the ability to detect shadows of approaching prey from above. The honeybee has 2 antennas, which is made up of 12 parts. The first part is attached to the ball joint of the head and allows the antenna to move. The second part is the pedicel, which is the flexing elbow joint of the antenna. And the last 10 parts, called flagellums, is covered with hair and other sensory structures. Without the presence of the flagellum, the honeybee would not be able to smell, taste, feel, monitor gravity and flight speed, detect sound waves, or the humidity or temperature. In short, the honeybee's antennae are a necessity for them to carry out their daily duties. The jaws or the mandible are spoon-like cement trowels mainly used to manipulate wax. While the muscles move laterally, they are not strong enough to chew or bite through anything. However, because of the sharpness of the tips of the mandibles, you will feel a pinching sensation when bitten. The mandibles can also be used to help the bee eat pollen, feed larvae and the queen, clean the hive, groom, and bite intruders at the first deterrent in a fight. The tongue or the proboscis is a sucking tube with the primary function of sucking up or drinking nectar, honey, and water. It also plays a role in food exchange between the bees. The thorax is the locomotive of the honeybee and contains all of the parts that a bee uses to walk or fly. Even though it may seem that the honeybee has two wings while it's in flight, the truth is it has two pairs of wings. Two wings on each side, which are connected by a hook when it flies. And, like all other insects, the honeybee has 6 legs attached to the thorax. The forewings of the thorax is typically larger than its hind wings. Its main function is flight, but it is also used as a cooling mechanism. The hind wing is used to attach the forewing by hooks called Hemolymph, allowing both pairs of wings to move together. It's also used to fan and cool a hive. The main function of the legs are for movement, but the bees also use their forelegs to clean their antenna using a special hook. And while the rear legs normally carry collected pollen in the cubula, they also have a pollen brush that helps clean the pollen off of other body parts. Both the queen and the worker has 7 segments, with each having a pair of spiracles, which are part of the respiratory system connected internally with 3 on the thorax. They allow the bees to access outside air. These segments also contain the female reproductive organs in the queen and the stingers in both the worker and the queen. The drone, however, has 8 segments, which also contain spiracles and the male reproduction organs. The stinger has 2 lances supported by a hard plate and strong muscles, which are connected to a poison gland surrounding the stinger. The purpose of the stinger is for defense. However, once a honeybee stings, it usually loses its life. The worker usually leaves the stinger in the body of the victim, and when pulling away, she ruptures her abdomen and dies. In this section, we'll look at the heart, which is a part of the hemolymph system. We'll look at the spiracles, which is part of the respiratory system. We'll look at the crop, which is the honey stomach, and we'll also look at the brain. Unlike in mammals, honeybees and insects have an open circular system, meaning their blood is not contained within tubes like veins or arteries. The blood of the hemolymph in the insects is free flowing throughout the body cavity and is pumped via the heart. The heart is the structure in red and acts like a pumping, leaking tube to help move the hemolymph throughout the body. The respiratory system in insects is a series of hollow tubes connected to air sacs in the body. The opening of these hollow tubes are called spiracles. The tubes are called tracheals, which then provide oxygen and gas exchange to all tissues in the body. The honey stomach is not a true stomach since no digestions occur there. The honey stomach is actually a crop used to carry nectar. The honey story is hardened to prevent fluids from entering the body at that location. Honeybees have excellent learning and memory processing abilities. Their brain processes information used in navigation and communications as well as memories. The brain also controls many of the basic bee body functions. It is a 2-part brain with optics and antenna lobes in the head and a series of even ventral ganglia in the thorax and abdomen. While in the honeybee's anatomies, there are many different glands and purposes. In this section, we're going to take a look at the most common glands that you as a beekeeper will experience as you keep bees. The hypopharyngeal gland is located near the top of the worker's head and is not fully developed when they emerge. However, after a few days of feeding on pollen, the glands become active. They secrete a sticky, milky fluid that is high in sugar, protein, and vitamin contents that we call royal jelly. This gland is absent in the drone and rudimentary in the queen. The Koschevnikov gland is located near the stinger shaft and produces a pheromone with more than 40 chemical compounds. This pheromone is released when a bee stings its target, signaling other bees to that location in a defensive posture. This pheromone odor has a banana-like smell. Using smoke can mask the pheromone odor when working in a hive, which helps keep the bee in the hive, or to have just eaten a banana before working a hive. The mandibular gland produces one of the most important pheromones in a hive. It is released by the queen to affect social behavior while maintaining the hive and for swarming. If this pheromone scent is not spread throughout the hive, the colony will assume that their queen is failing or not present and will begin the process of replacing her. Young worker bees also use this gland to produce a lipid-rich white substance to mix with the substance released from the Hypopharyngeal, resulting in royal jelly. The Nasonov gland is used by the worker bees to release a pheromone to orientate the colony members back to the hive or to the site of a new home when swarming. Also, when young bees are leaving the hive to become field bees for the first time, they will use this homing scent during their orientation flight to find their way back home. This gland is located on the last segment of the abdomen. Bees will raise their abdomen in the air to release their pheromones while fanning their wings to spread the scent. The venom gland in the worker bee produces the venom that is injected into a person at the point of a sting. When venom is injected into the body, it damages the tissue and can cause a serious reaction. The wax glands of the worker bee starts to secrete wax about 12 days after emerging. About 6 days later, the glands deteriorate and the bee will no longer be able to produce wax. This is one of the reasons that it is critical to ensure that the queen continues laying eggs to maintain the colony size and produce young workers that produce wax. Like human, senses are vital to the honeybee's daily functions. In this chapter, we will quickly cover the functions of the honeybee's senses. Honeybees have 5 eyes, 2 large compound eyes and 3 smaller ocelli on top of their heads. Their compound eyes have thousands of lenses and can see ultralight colors. This color vision is the fastest in the animal kingdom and 5 times faster than humans. This gives the bee the ability to see while flying at high rates of speed. The honeybee smells through their antennae, which has 170 odoreceptors, making their sense of smell 100 times more sensitive than that of a human. This heightened sense of smell allows the honeybee to locate pollen-rich flowers and recognize and locate other bees. Bees have touch sensors on their antennae, mouthpiece, tarsals, and exoskeletons. Even the base of their hair has nerves sensitive to vibrations. The honeybee tongue contains taste buds that detect sweet, sour, bitter, and salt. They have the same range as humans, except they are more sensitive to salt and less sensitive to bitter flavors. The workers perform a series of movements, often referred to as the waggle dance, to teach each worker the location of food source. Scout bees fly from the colony in search of pollen and nectar. If successful in finding a good supply of food, the scout returns to the hive and dances on the honeycomb. The distance and speed of this movement communicates the distance of the forage site to the others. Ah, you hear that? Honeybees possess a rich repertoire of tones and sounds, from queen piping and quacking to workers hissing and buzzing. Bees exist in a world of sound that is beyond our range of hearing, just as they see ultraviolet lights, which is invisible to humans. Bees do not have ears, but they are able to pick up the sounds by the physical sensation of vibrations on their antennae and other body parts like their legs and hair that detects the air particle movements. This concludes Chapter 2 of the Washington State Beekeepers Association Apprentice course. Please complete all assigned reading and videos for this chapter, as well as joining me for a 1-hour chapter review at the scheduled date and time.